Give us your name, rank, and branch of service.
Janet Holland, Army, Master Sergeant.
And what was your area of expertise? Because this is interesting.
I'm a musician, and I auditioned for the TRADOC band, which was at Fort Monroe at the time. But the reason I was allowed to do that is because Title IX had passed, and before that, all the bands, women could not be in any of the bands except the WAC band, and I'm speaking for the Army, Women's Army Corps. Now all the bands opened up, and I was allowed to go into any band that I could qualify for the auditions, and so that's how I got in.
Now, what time frame are we talking about?
I enlisted, I actually went to basic training in September 1974. I signed up, took the oath and all that in June, but I was on hold until I went in September and went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training. Alrighty.
And tell us, let's start with your background, with your Taylor background, because you are, tell us about your family.
Well, my last name's Holland, and that's Holland like the country.
Okay.
And if you're from Taylor, you've heard of Holland Road. It comes right off of Goddard Road. And there's the Holland Farmhouse, which is a centennial site. My dad was born there, Howard Holland. Okay. And there's Holland School. I did not get to go to Holland School because I went to St. John's Lutheran School.
Okay.
So yeah, there's some Holland history here, and I'm doing a lot of ancestry things. I'm very proud of my Holland ancestry.
Okay. Let's test your ancestry a little bit.
No.
When you're talking about Holland Street, Holland Road,
right.
Okay, and Holland School, named after whom and for what reason?
You know, I don't know how far back that goes, because I know my dad his dad died. Joseph Holland died in the Spanish flu. Okay. So my dad was only 10 at the time. And then his grandfather raised him in that house. My dad was actually born in that house, but I don't know at what point did they build Holland Road. I wish I could tell you. I don't know. Don't know.
That's okay.
But they've been here since at least the 1850s, the Hollands. Not sure how far back.
And how much time did you actually spend in Taylor before you moved on?
So I moved here as a little baby in 1951 when I was born. And then so when I went in the Army in '74, I went to University of Michigan, but I was living technically still a resident of Taylor. So until '74, and then when I went 3 years in the Army, I actually got out, and I came back to Taylor, and I taught in Taylor at Johnson Elementary and at Taylor Center Elementary, where I actually went to kindergarten, and then I went out to Montana to teach school for a while.
Okay, all righty, interesting, very, very interesting. Tell us about your years at Michigan.
Oh, well, I'm the obnoxious Michigan fan. Go Blue, I must do it. I could sing the victors, I won't do that for you. So the reason I went there is because the high school band director at Taylor was Mr. Rima, and he was the best teacher, very, very strict, and I wanted a good music education, and he went to Michigan, so I guess I was brainwashed, and I went to Michigan. I was very lucky to get in there. Not too many students were allowed to go there. And I was instrumental ed major, and clarinet was my major instrument. And at the time, I wanted to be in the marching band besides the symphony band, but I was a girl, not a woman yet. We were girls, and we weren't allowed. And it wasn't illegal, but Michigan had so many people, they could just take all the guys. So Title IX, fast forward, Title IX passed, and as a senior, then they had to take us. And I waited till my graduate year to do it because I was doing a lot of student teaching, but I wasn't allowed to be on it. And I was like, I'm in high school, I'm in the marching band. No, you're a girl at college, you can't do it. But we got there eventually.
What was it like being in the marching band in Michigan?
Exhilarating. The first time to come through that tunnel, we did not practice on the field. And so all the team is doing their warm-ups. Now they're all revved like this, and they're coming back through that tunnel. It's loud. So we're lined up here waiting to come out. They're coming back. And so you do this fast cadence coming out, and your knees are high stepping, and the drums are going bam, and you go up. But you're all straight lines. The last minute, it goes like this. And I played alto horns, looks like a small euphonium. They call it peck horn because we play afterbeats. So the drums are here, but just 1, 1, 1, 1. And I was on this side, the fifth one up, so I could always find me where I was. So that was pretty cool.
Wow, that's quite neat.
It is exhilarating.
Now, what made you enter the service after going to Michigan?
Well, truly, I wasn't so sure with my teaching experience as a student teacher. I thought, I'm not sure if I wanted to do that. And a lot of the bands were having a bit of pressure. Oh, we can take women now, we better find women. And there was someone who was a graduate of Michigan, and he went to Michigan and Eastern Michigan University. And he came, we had to audition, and this was it was called TRADOC, TRADOC, Training and Doctrine. So the TRADOC is in charge of all training for the Army. So that was the band that he was auditioning for. And I said, oh, let's try that. And so I auditioned. I came in on clarinet at the time. So that's how I got there. But he just, he got 5 of us, 3 from Michigan and 2 from Eastern Michigan University. Went to the Fort Monroe, which is at Hampton, Virginia.
Okay, and then walk us through, where do you go from Fort Monroe?
I got
How
out.
does that work?
I did 3 years.
Okay.
It was a little rough because Title IX had passed that opened up all the Army bands. And you're forced into 2 groups of people, had been all male, so no real horror stories to tell, but it was a rough time. So I got out, came back to Michigan. I had 1 semester to finish on my master's. And so that would be the fall 73. I'm sorry, 77. And so finished my master's. Then the January to June, I taught Taylor at Johnson Elementary and Taylor Center Elementary, where I actually went to kindergarten there. I taught general music, so K through 6. So I did that for 1 semester. And then I really wanted to teach instrumental music because that's what I'm trained for. And I took a job out in Great Falls, Montana, teaching special ed instrumental music.
Okay.
And I was there a year and a half doing that, which was, I had no training in that, and I have lifelong special ed student that has come and visited me. So it threw me into a situation that I don't know what I'm doing, but I was pretty good at it. But I really missed playing. And so then I said, I want to go back into the Army. And that's when I went into the Army Field Band at Fort Meade.
Okay, alrighty. Tell us about being a band member in the Army. What's the experience like? What's your schedule like?
Well, our band is the band that marched the least, which was what for me, I really wanted to play inside concert band experience because everybody thinks marching, and all the other bands march. The Army Field Band, they maybe a parade once every other year. It's not our expertise, trust me. And so the band I was in, and it's called, quote, a special band. The Army Band, which is Fort Myer, Virginia, they all have territories. They do everything in Washington, D.C. We are the PR group. We actually are part of Office Chief of Public Affairs at the Pentagon. So we were housed at Fort Meade, sort of in the Baltimore area, but we're not Fort Meade's band. We're the Pentagon's band. And we would go on 6-week tours at a time with a chorus, entertaining civilians, PR. You need the goodwill of the people supporting the military. And my favorite times was when we actually played in a high school gym in the middle of nowhere. It was a little noisy because of the bleachers, but the people had, nothing would come into town, and we'd get to talk to them afterwards because they'd come up to you and you're trying to pack your equipment. If you go to the bigger cities, you're up on a stage and you're sort of separated from the people. So I liked the small towns. And of course, you got to go to some cool places, sometimes overseas. We went to Korea, Okinawa, where my dad fought in World War II, and Japan. Another time we went to India, and a few times to Europe. And so not a lot of that, but we would travel about 4 months out of every year on buses, stayed in hotels, and just entertain like 9 days in a row, and you get 1 day off. And PR.
That's an interesting story.
Yeah.
Now, that would have placed you after the Vietnam War conflict. What was going on in the general military while you were in it?
So the first part is, the very end of Vietnam, and that was 74 to 77. When I came back in, I reported to Fort Meade February 1980, and I stayed through June of 1997. And not freedom, the first part of the war, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, we had nothing to do with it. We lost some of our drivers because you have people driving the buses, you have equipment, so we would go out. I do remember, I don't remember the state, but it was someplace out west, and it was a high school gym, and we had just, when Bush was, first President Bush, like we've won that part of the war, it must have been 10 minutes standing ovation because it was like we had nothing to do with winning the war, but we were part of the Army, and that was pretty exciting.
Well,
But we really didn't. We don't go over there. They call it being stabilized. We do a whole career there. They do not transfer us. You can choose to go to another band, but why would you? Because the bands are different levels. So we're called special bands. So we do have the better players. We get a higher rank, which means more money, and so you want to stay with the best players.
Now, you left the military in what year?
1997. I'd wanted to do 20 years, so you could do your 20 years and you can get retirement.
What did you do from that point on?
I just freelanced playing harp, married my husband, who I knew from the Army Field Band, because he did 20 years, and then he had a second career at the Voice of America in Washington, D.C., so I really didn't have to have a second full-time job. And I learned harp in the Army Field Band. I took lessons for many years at my expense, and I just freelanced, parties and weddings, and that was my career, part-time.
Okay. Sons or daughters?
No children.
No children. Okay. Looking back on your career in the military, does anything jump out at you as far as, you mentioned the George Bush, the senior George Bush, that performance there. Any others that really jump out at you, whether you may have been overseas or something where?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So for the 40th anniversary of D-Day, we went to Normandy, and President Reagan was there and President Mitterrand. And so we had to, it was interesting, so we were doing, we didn't really march, but sort of a standing formation, and both presidents are up there, and the pool of water's here. We had to cut our band down because the French band wasn't as big, and so it would look a little weird. And then earlier that, we're just sitting in an area, and the dogs, of course, are sniffing everything to make sure there's nothing wrong. And so that was, and then we could wander around, and I look down the cliffs, and you hear about them landing. They don't just go on the beach. I mean, they're climbing up these cliffs, so I just can't. My father was in the Pacific, so I just had your mic. My father was in the Pacific, so he did not land there. But my father-in-law was over there, and so I don't know how they did that. And so it was pretty emotional. And
I think a lot of people don't realize, I know if anybody's ever watched those D-Day celebrations that go on, especially that marks special times like the 40th or 50th or whatever, they're truly an experience to watch. I know I've never been to one, but I've watched them, and it's like, wow, this is a celebration.
And there were a lot of World War II heroes still there.
Right.
And we did march. We did marching occasion. I don't remember the town. It's a small little town. And the people, the French people, they're cheering for us. I thought, you're cheering for our fathers, not for us. But that was sort of cool. So then fast forward 10 years, and so the 50th anniversary, we did the England side, and Queen Elizabeth was there, and Prince Charles was there. No, we did not get to meet them, but it was lots of rain. We had lots of shows to do different places, and I thought, surely they'll cancel this. Oh no, not in England. You're gonna go through it. You lose your shoes sometimes, and you're in the rain and the mud, but you're doing your marching shows over there.
Wow. Looking back, any regrets? Would you do it all over again?
I would do it, yes. I am extremely patriotic. I have no idea why I am. Even as a little child, I'm putting red, white, and blue crepe paper in my tricycle. I'm really, really patriotic. So I'm glad to have served my country. So grateful to have a music career. Not too many musicians have a full-time music career with benefits, with retirement. And so, for the PR aspect was just wonderful, to what we did for people. So I'm very grateful for it.
It has been a pleasure. I'm glad you
Thank
stopped
you
by.
so much. I'm
very, very interesting
honored.
story.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.